Mexican authorities have confirmed the death of one of the country's most notorious and long-pursued criminal figures, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, widely known as El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of Mexico's most powerful and violent drug trafficking organizations. On February 22, 2026, security forces from the Mexican Army, the National Guard, and federal units launched a coordinated operation in the town of Tapalpa, in the western state of Jalisco, aimed at capturing El Mencho alive. The area has long been considered a stronghold of the cartel he led, and authorities had received intelligence indicating his presence there. The operation was described by Mexican officials as the culmination of months of intelligence work, surveillance, and tactical preparation. According to official statements, the primary objective was to capture Oseguera Cervantes. However, as security forces moved in, they encountered armed resistance from cartel members, leading to a violent confrontation. During the firefight, several cartel operatives were killed on sight, and Oseguera Cervantes was critically wounded. He was evacuated by helicopter for medical treatment, but died from his injuries en route to a facility in Mexico City, according to defense authorities. Authorities also reported that 2 suspected cartel members were arrested during the operation. Armored vehicles, heavy weapons, and other tactical equipment were seized. 3 members of the armed forces were wounded while conducting the raid. International collaboration played a role in the mission. The Mexican Defense Ministry acknowledged that the operation was carried out by national forces, with complementary intelligence support from the United States, reflecting joint efforts between the 2 governments to dismantle the CJNG's leadership. El Mencho was 59 years old at the time of his death and had been a top target for both Mexican and U.S. authorities for years. The U.S. State Department had placed a reward of up to $15 million for information leading to his capture, and the cartel he led had been designated a foreign terrorist organization by the United States earlier this month because of its involvement in large-scale trafficking, violence, and attacks on security forces. His rise to power was lengthy and bloody. Originally from Aguililla, in the neighboring state of Michoacán, Oseguera Cervantes was reportedly involved in drug trafficking since the 1990s. After serving time in a United States prison in the 1990s for drug distribution charges, he returned to Mexico and became deeply involved with local organized crime. Over the years, he helped form and expand the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, which has been widely regarded as one of the most aggressive criminal organizations in the country. Under his leadership, the CJNG became notorious for its willingness to confront rival groups, use military-grade weaponry, and carry out brazen attacks against law enforcement. In 2020, cartel forces even launched grenade and rifle attacks in the heart of Mexico City, targeting high-ranking security officials. The death of El Mencho represents a significant development in Mexico's ongoing struggle against organized crime. Governments in both Mexico and the United States portrayed the operation as a major strategic victory, a blow to a figure whose cartel was implicated in the production and trafficking of cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and especially fentanyl, which has contributed to widespread overdose deaths in North America. But almost immediately after news of his death spread, signs of unrest began to emerge across multiple Mexican states. Videos on social media showed smoke rising over cities like Puerto Vallarta as vehicles were set on fire and roads were blocked. In Jalisco and beyond, people were urged to stay indoors and avoid travel as security forces braced for retaliatory incidents. The tactic of setting roadblocks with burning vehicles is a common form of retaliation used by cartels, not only as a show of defiance, but also to disrupt movement of security forces, intimidate civilians, and create logistical challenges for law enforcement in the immediate aftermath of a high-profile operation. Airports and major transport hubs were impacted as well. In some areas, flights were delayed or canceled due to the unrest and heightened security concerns. Governments, including the United States and Canada, issued travel advisories urging citizens to remain cautious and avoid affected regions until the situation stabilized. School closures and shelter-in-place directives were reported in multiple states, as local officials attempted to protect civilians from violence and disorder that erupted following the announcement of El Mencho's death. This unrest is not just symbolic. It represents the immediate pushback from CJNG members and affiliates who, in the wake of losing their leader, are asserting their presence and testing the state's ability to maintain control. Experts note that cartel retaliation serves multiple functions, signaling strength to rival organizations, maintaining cohesion among members, and sending a warning to government authorities that the CJNG remains a formidable force. The coordination of the operation highlights how the Mexican government has evolved its approach to high-value targets. Unlike previous attempts that relied heavily on local intelligence or ad hoc raids, the February 22nd operation leveraged months of careful planning, aerial surveillance, and real-time human intelligence to minimize risk and maximize the probability of neutralizing El Mencho. Sources indicate that helicopters provided overwatch, drones tracked movements, and federal forces systematically secured perimeter positions before moving in. Yet the operation's success raises questions about what comes next. Cartels, especially highly hierarchical organizations like the CJNG, do not dissolve overnight. Analysts warn that the death of a central figure often triggers succession battles within the organization, leading to infighting, splinter groups, and unpredictable surges in violence. While the removal of El Mencho may temporarily disrupt operations, the structural resilience of the cartel suggests that long-term impacts on drug trafficking and organized crime in Mexico will be more gradual than immediate. The immediate aftermath also underscores the precarious situation for local civilians. In cities where CJNG influence is historically strong, the absence of a central figure creates both opportunities and dangers. On one hand, authorities can expand their presence. On the other, local populations may face increased vulnerability during clashes between emerging cartel factions or rival groups seeking to claim territory. The state's ability to maintain security in these zones is critical to preventing widespread civilian harm. Furthermore, international implications cannot be ignored. The CJNG's involvement in cross-border drug trafficking means that disruptions within Mexico can affect drug markets in the United States and beyond. Intelligence suggests that the cartel's logistics chains, from production to distribution, may temporarily falter as leaders adjust to new power structures. This could create short-term gaps in supply, but may also incite heightened aggression as remaining leaders seek to reassert control. The method of retaliation observed, public roadblocks, burning vehicles, and armed confrontations, also sends a message to the global community. High-profile cartel takedowns do not erase influence, they transform it. By demonstrating their capacity to respond quickly and violently, CJNG factions maintain credibility both internally and externally. Analysts point out that these tactics have a psychological impact, reinforcing fear and compliance among members, local populations, and even law enforcement. Mexico's security apparatus faces another challenge: maintaining momentum. Operations like the one in Tapalpa are resource-intensive, requiring coordination among multiple agencies, sustained intelligence efforts, and careful risk management. Following the elimination of El Mencho, authorities must anticipate both direct retaliation and opportunistic actions by rival organizations seeking to exploit the temporary disarray. This requires constant monitoring, rapid response capability, and the delicate balance of visibility and strategic discretion. At the same time, public messaging is key. Authorities need to project competence while acknowledging the realities of cartel retaliation. Residents in affected areas are urged to remain vigilant, comply with advisories, and trust official channels for updates. This is not just a matter of safety, it's about shaping perception, preventing panic, and ensuring that the CJNG's demonstrations of force do not destabilize civil society beyond immediate tactical concerns. The death of El Mencho also highlights broader trends in organized crime in Mexico. Cartels today operate with military-level sophistication, leveraging encrypted communications, advanced weapons, and logistical networks that resemble small paramilitary organizations. They are resilient, adaptive, and capable of rapid retaliation, meaning that even high-profile victories like this one do not guarantee lasting peace or security. In many ways, the operation serves as a case study for law enforcement worldwide. It demonstrates that removing a leader requires precision, intelligence, and coordination. It also illustrates the challenges inherent in dealing with organizations that are decentralized, highly adaptable, and culturally embedded in local economies. The CJNG's network extends from rural strongholds to urban centers, influencing legitimate businesses, local politics, and community structures, all of which complicate enforcement efforts. Even as authorities celebrate a tactical victory, analysts caution that the long-term impact on cartel activity remains uncertain. Historical patterns suggest that leadership decapitation can temporarily disrupt operations, but often leads to increased volatility as second-tier leaders assert authority. Rival factions may seize the moment to expand territory, challenge loyalties, or initiate violent campaigns to establish dominance. The public reaction across social media reflects this tension. Clips of burning vehicles, armed confrontations, and blocked highways circulate widely, creating both awareness and fear. Authorities must navigate this landscape carefully. Every viral post can influence public perception, shape narratives about government competence, and affect the morale of both security forces and cartel members. Ultimately, the death of El Mencho represents a critical moment in Mexico's ongoing battle against organized crime. It is a victory for law enforcement and an important symbolic event, but it is also a reminder of the persistent, violent, and adaptable nature of cartels like the CJNG. For the Mexican state, the challenge now is to consolidate gains, anticipate retaliation, and ensure that the power vacuum does not escalate into prolonged chaos. As we continue to monitor the situation, one thing is clear. The story of El Mencho's downfall is only one chapter in the larger narrative of organized crime in Mexico. The real impact on communities, on drug markets, and on national security will unfold over the coming weeks and months. As the dust settled from the Tapalpa operation, the immediate reality became clear. El Mencho's death, while a tactical victory for Mexican and U.S. authorities, is far from the end of the story. Within hours, multiple regions across Jalisco and neighboring states experienced surges in cartel-related activity, as remaining CJNG operatives sought to assert control and send a message that the organization remains formidable. The retaliation was swift and unmistakable. Reports confirmed that cartel members established multiple roadblocks using burning vehicles, effectively paralyzing key transit routes and creating chaos for both civilians and security forces. Smoke plumes and flames dominated city streets, a chilling visual reminder that the CJNG retains the capacity for rapid and coordinated action, even after losing their leader. In Puerto Vallarta, Guadalajara, and surrounding towns, highways were blocked, cars were set ablaze, and traffic came to a standstill. Locals reported hearing gunfire in some areas, while law enforcement scrambled to contain the unrest. These tactics are a hallmark of cartel retaliation. The use of arson, blockade, and intimidation serves multiple strategic purposes. First, it demonstrates that the cartel still has reach and influence, signaling to rival groups that CJNG members are organized, motivated, and dangerous. Second, it tests the response of law enforcement, probing weaknesses in coordination, deployment, and community control. Finally, such actions act as a psychological tool, instilling fear in the population, dissuading civilians from cooperating with authorities, and reinforcing the perception of power, even in the absence of a central leader. Analysts are clear. Retaliation is not just symbolic. In the immediate aftermath of a high-profile assassination or capture, these acts often precede targeted attacks on rival groups, security personnel, or local officials. The CJNG has a history of escalating violence in response to leadership losses, and El Mencho's death may trigger a cycle of reprisal that could last weeks, if not months. Beyond the streets, other layers of chaos are emerging. Airports and major transport hubs reported delays as heightened security measures were implemented. Travelers were warned to remain vigilant, and U.S. and Canadian authorities issued travel advisories cautioning citizens to avoid affected areas. Even schools and universities suspended activities, while local governments implemented shelter-in-place directives to protect residents from potential violence. The immediate effect is disruption of daily life, economic activity, and public confidence, all key metrics in the state's ability to project control. The operation itself, however, offers important insight into how Mexican authorities and their international partners are approaching the fight against organized crime. By integrating real-time intelligence, aerial surveillance, and highly trained special forces, authorities were able to execute a precision strike, minimizing casualties among their own personnel while neutralizing the target. This represents a significant evolution from past operations that often resulted in widespread collateral damage and protracted firefights. But even with operational success, experts caution that the CJNG is structurally resilient. Cartels like this are not built around a single leader alone. They are composed of networks, cells, and lieutenants trained to adapt. Succession planning is often implicit within these organizations, meaning that while El Mencho's death is a blow, it is unlikely to result in the immediate collapse of the CJNG. Instead, internal power struggles may emerge, with secondary leaders vying for authority. This can lead to splinter groups, unpredictable violence, and shifts in control over key trafficking routes. In fact, historical patterns suggest that decapitation strategies, removing a cartel's head, tend to create short-term disruption, but long-term outcomes are mixed. Rival groups may attempt to claim territory, while remaining CJNG cells assert independence or attempt to consolidate power. Analysts warn that these transitions can be deadly, with violent clashes between factions, reprisal killings, and a general spike in insecurity in areas previously dominated by the cartel. This uncertainty extends beyond Mexico's borders. The CJNG has extensive international operations, including trafficking networks in the United States, Europe, and Asia. Any destabilization within the cartel has the potential to ripple outward, affecting drug supply chains, distribution hubs, and organized crime alliances abroad. U.S. authorities, already heavily involved in intelligence sharing and joint operations, are closely monitoring these developments, aware that fluctuations in Mexico's cartel dynamics can have immediate consequences on domestic markets and public health. This is raw, this is real, and it's happening now. The streets of Mexico are on high alert. The government is mobilized. CJNG retaliation is ongoing, and the world is watching to see whether the state can hold the line. If you want to stay updated on stories like this, raw, unfiltered, and broken down straight, hit that subscribe button. Join the community, ring the bell, and stay informed. Every week, we break down complex events, show you the forces behind the headlines, and keep you ahead of the story. Stay sharp, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next video.